Usually when we look at human psychology, we're looking at a fully constructed house.
Yeah.
We examine the wallpaper, the furniture, maybe the layout of the rooms.
Right, this surface level stuff.
Exactly. But what happens to the human mind when a Category 5 hurricane comes along and just rips that house entirely off its foundation?
Leaving nothing.
Nothing. When every single comfort, every piece of identity, every distraction is violently stripped away, leaving absolutely nothing but the bare concrete slab. I mean, what is left of us then? Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're unpacking Viktor Frankl's monumental book, Man's Search for Meaning.
It really is a monumental piece of work.
It is, and we're looking at his original text alongside some supplemental summaries, a YouTube analysis, and a really great leadership coaching blog by Ed Bautista. The mission for this deep dive is to see how a survival framework forged in the absolute darkest conditions imaginable applies to, well, you. To the neuroses, the anxieties, and the search for purpose in our lives today.
It's an incredible study of the human condition. And I think the baseline to establish here is that this isn't just, a historical recounting of suffering.
Right.
This is an existential validation of human resilience. Frankl essentially proves that life holds potential meaning under any conditions. Literally any conditions.
And the background of the text itself is just staggering. Frankl, who was this brilliant psychiatrist from Vienna, survives the Holocaust, gets out, and he writes this entire manuscript in just 9 successive days.
9 days. It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, and he originally intended to publish it completely anonymously. Like, he didn't want fame at all. He just felt this overwhelming responsibility to share what he'd seen.
And then it goes on to sell millions of copies.
Okay, well, let's unpack this. How does a horrific experience in a Nazi concentration camp lead to a revolutionary psychological theory? One that you can actually use in a boardroom or a therapist's office right now?
Well, to really understand the theory, you have to understand the baseline of his study. You have to look at the immediate, overwhelming shock of admission to the camp.
Because that sets the stage for everything.
Exactly. That initial psychological rupture is where it all begins.
So we start exactly where Frankl's ordeal began. The sources detail this arrival so vividly. You have 1,500 people packed onto a train.
80 people to a single train car.
Yeah, traveling for days in a state of just sheer terror. And then they arrive at Auschwitz and hear this eerie, uncanny whistle of the train engine.
And immediately, the stripping of identity begins. Frankl describes standing in front of this tall, fit SS officer.
Right, the guy's just casually supporting his elbow.
Yeah, playing this finger game, just pointing leisurely to the right or to the left.
A casual finger game that literally decided life or death. Pointing to the right meant forced labor, and pointing to the left meant immediate death in the gas chambers.
And 90% of Frankl's transport was sent straight to the left.
Which is just terrifying. And for those sent to the right, the complete erasure of their former selves begins. I mean, they lose their clothes, their hair is shaved off.
Their names are replaced by numbers.
Yeah. And Frankl actually had this roll of paper hidden in the inner pocket of his coat. It was a scientific manuscript, his entire life's work up to that point.
His most prized possession.
Right. And he tries to take a veteran prisoner into his confidence, begging him to keep it. And the veteran just stares at him, grins mockingly, and yells one word: shit.
That's it.
That's it. That's the value of his life's work in this new reality. He's forced to just strike out his whole former life. But what's wild to me is the psychological phenomenon he observes right at this precipice. He calls it the delusion of reprieve.
Yes, where even facing the gas chambers, the prisoners convince themselves that it won't be that bad.
Right, that they might be saved at the last minute. The brain just forcibly alters reality. But wait, I have to push back here.
Go ahead.
I really struggle with this mechanism. It's like a mental immune response, right? Like an animal playing dead. But when you're in an extreme survival scenario, shouldn't your brain be putting you on high alert? Tricking yourself into thinking everything is fine feels like the fastest way to get killed.
You would think so, yeah. From an evolutionary standpoint, it does seem super counterproductive. You'd expect the amygdala to just demand hyper-awareness.
Right, to escape the threat.
But this initial shock phase is actually a highly sophisticated mechanism of self-preservation. It is a perfectly normal reaction to a highly abnormal situation.
So it's not just foolishness.
No, not at all. It's the mind's way of pacing the intake of trauma. If the human brain absorbed the totality of that horror all at once, the psyche would just shatter on impact.
Oh, wow. So it's literally buying time.
Exactly. The delusion of reprieve acts as a psychological shock absorber, letting the reality trickle in slowly so the organism doesn't just break.
But that mental shock absorber eventually wears out, right? I mean, the delusion cannot survive the constant physical beatings and the starvation.
No, it can't. And that shifts us into Frankl's second phase of the camp experience.
Which is defined by this overwhelming emotional numbing.
Apathy. The human mind is incredibly adaptive. When the external reality becomes a relentless assault, the brain starts shutting down non-essential functions to conserve energy.
Because empathy and disgust and horror, those burn calories.
They burn massive amounts of cognitive bandwidth.
And the details in the sources about this regression to primitive needs are just visceral. Because of the extreme starvation, the prisoners' mental lives completely revolve around food.
They dream desperately of bread and warm baths.
Their entire existence shrinks to the size of their next meal, and the sexual urge entirely disappears, which Frankl notes as a psychiatrist is really unusual compared to other all-male environments.
The mental bandwidth is just zeroed out.
Completely zeroed out.
Right.
There's this one chilling anecdote where Frankl is sitting in a sick hut, just sipping his watery soup, and a typhus victim has just died.
Oh, this part is rough.
Yeah. A fellow prisoner grabs the corpse by the legs and drags it up these earthen steps to get it out the door. And the dead man's head is just bumping against the wood, making this uncanny rattling noise.
And Frankl just watches.
He makes eye contact with the glazed eyes of the corpse, a guy he was just speaking to 2 hours ago. And he just keeps sipping his soup. He feels absolutely nothing. But see, in our everyday lives, if you're apathetic to a dead body, we view that as a moral failing or depression.
Right. But what's fascinating here is that in this context, apathy was the ultimate survival tool. It was a necessary mechanism of self-defense.
To protect the mind.
Exactly. By deadening the emotions, the prisoner built a protective shell. If you felt the full emotional weight of every indignity, you would literally die of exhaustion. The mind forcibly lowers its emotional bandwidth to focus solely on preserving the body.
So if the external world is a nightmare, the body is starved, and the emotions are shut down, what is actually left to keep a person moving forward?
That is the big question.
Because we've stripped the house down to the concrete slab, but this is the pivot. This is the central paradox of Frankl's entire experience.
The indestructibility of the inner life.
Yes. He observes that amidst this absolute deprivation, the human spirit doesn't just survive. In some cases, it actually deepens.
Frankl noticed that sensitive people who were used to a rich intellectual life often survived better than those of a more robust, purely physical nature.
Because they could retreat inwards.
Exactly. Their bodies withered, but their inner selves were less damaged.
The moments of beauty they describe in the text are breathtaking. They're starving, wearing rags. But Frankl talks about marching out to a work site in the icy darkness, slipping in the mud, and having these intensely vivid mental conversations with his wife.
And he doesn't even know if she's alive.
Right. Or the time a prisoner played a desperately sad tango on a violin in the dark on the exact day of his wife's 24th birthday. Or when they rushed out of their huts just to admire a spectacular sunset.
In the Bavarian woods, yeah.
One of these starving men actually says how beautiful the world could be. It really reminds me of like a sensory deprivation tank.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
When you remove all external comforts and distractions, the internal world, your capacity for love, your memory, art, it amplifies. It becomes almost tangible.
Because the external world has been muted to zero, allowing the internal signal to dominate. And through that, Frankl draws out his core thesis. He realizes that love goes far beyond the physical person.
Salvation is through love and in love.
Yes. Even if a person doesn't know if their loved one is alive, the contemplation of that love provides fulfillment. And this matters deeply for you, the listener, because it proves that the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, can never be taken away.
They can destroy your body, but they can't control your inner choice.
Never.
And that profound realization is what leads directly to the clinical framework Frankl formalized after liberation, logotherapy.
Right.
To really grasp how revolutionary this was, we have to look at what logotherapy was rebelling against. In Frankl's day, you basically had two reigning psychological camps.
Sigmund Freud and Alfred Adler.
Exactly. Freud argued that humans are fundamentally driven by the pleasure principle, satisfying basic instincts and avoiding pain.
Reducing motivation to biology.
Yeah. And Adler argued we're driven by the striving for superiority.
The pursuit of power and status.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Frankl introduces the will to meaning. He says our primary motivation isn't pleasure and it isn't power. It's the search for a meaningful purpose.
Which addresses the existential vacuum.
Right, that feeling of emptiness in modern society. I like to think of it like a dinner party. Freud says you went to the party because you want the cake. Adler says you went because you want to sit at the head of the table.
I love that.
But Frankl says you went because you want to know why the party is happening in the first place.
Yes, because if you don't know the why, Freud's cake is empty calories, and sitting at Adler's table feels hollow. The meaning differs from person to person, and it changes daily. It's not one grand meaning to life.
It's specific.
Very specific. It's about finding meaning in everyday tasks and relationships.
So how do we actually apply this? Frankl gives a practical roadmap. 3 paths to meaning. First, creating a work or doing a deed. Second, encountering someone or experiencing something, like love or nature. And third, the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
That third path is crucial.
But wait, I have to push back here, bringing in Ed Batista's perspective. Does this mean we have to suffer to find meaning? Like, are we supposed to actively look for hardship?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Frankl strongly refutes that idea. Suffering is in no way necessary to find meaning.
Good, because that sounds exhausting.
Right. If suffering is avoidable, the meaningful thing to do is remove the cause. Put out the fire.
Don't just sit in the burning building.
Exactly. This raises an important question, though. As Batista notes, what happens when suffering is unavoidable, like an incurable illness or grief?
Things we can't control.
Right. That is when we are challenged to change ourselves. Batista has this coaching exercise where he asks, what has an uncontrollable source of suffering taught you? By doing that, you transform a predicament into a human achievement.
That reframing is essential. It doesn't erase the grief, but it prevents the suffering from being meaningless. And logotherapy actually has specific, actionable techniques for this, like paradoxical intention.
Trying to bring about the exact thing you wish to avoid.
Which sounds insane. But the SparkNote summary is a great example. Curing insomnia. Usually you lie there obsessing over falling asleep.
And that anxiety keeps you awake.
Right. Anticipatory anxiety. So paradoxical intention flips the script. You get into bed and actively try to stay awake for as long as humanly possible.
And because you remove the pressure to sleep, you just doze right off.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for us today? How does this tie into Frankl's broader concept of tragic optimism?
Tragic optimism is how we say yes to life despite the tragic triad. Pain, guilt, and death.
Which are unavoidable.
Yes. Pain is an opportunity for courage. Guilt is an opportunity to change and live better. And death, this is profound. Death is the ultimate deadline. It gives our current actions their urgency and value. We aren't deterministic machines. We are free to respond to our circumstances.
That is the ultimate takeaway of this deep dive. We've gone from the darkest despair of a concentration camp to an empowering framework that puts the remote control of your attitude back in your own hands. Whether you're stuck in traffic or dealing with profound grief, the how can be endured if you have a why.
And to leave you with one final perspective-shifting concept directly from Frankl. Instead of fearing death and time passing, what if you viewed your past as a secure vault?
A secure vault.
Yes. Everything you have ever done, loved, or bravely suffered through is not lost. It's been safely deposited in the past, forever locked away from being undone or destroyed.
So the question to you is, how would you live today, right now, if you knew you were actively filling that indestructible vault for the rest of your life?